All right, so we're going to deep dive into data analysis in cybersecurity. For this deep dive, we've got Jessie, a data analyst, and Chris, a network security engineer, here to help us kind of break this down.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is data analysis has become really kind of essential in cybersecurity these days. It's like trying to understand a city just by looking at traffic patterns. You need a way to kind of see what's normal and what's not.
So if our network is that city, how does data analysis help us to kind of see those threats?
So basically you have all this raw data, logs from servers, network traffic, user activity, and data analysis helps us to go through all that and find the signals that matter. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right, okay, that makes sense. So where do shells come into this?
So shells are like the tools that allow us to interact with this data. They're like our command centers. Give us the power to manipulate data, run scripts, automate tasks. They're incredibly versatile.
So we're not just looking at spreadsheets, we're using actual code to analyze this data.
Exactly. Commands like grep, awk, and sed are like our Swiss Army knives. Grep lets us search for specific patterns, like finding all the log entries with the word error in them. Awk is amazing for extracting data and manipulating text. And then sed helps us filter and transform data streams.
Okay, so it's kind of like detective work then. You're searching for those clues, trying to piece it all together.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. And just like detectives use different tools, we use different types of shells for different jobs.
So are some shells better for certain tasks than others?
Absolutely. You know, some shells like Bash are very versatile and widely used. Others like Zsh are known for their customization. And then you have shells like PowerShell that are designed specifically for Windows.
Okay, so if I'm working in a Windows environment, I'd probably want to use PowerShell. And if I'm on Linux, Bash might be a better option.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right tool for the job. Regardless of which shell you're using, though, understanding scripting is essential to taking your data analysis to the next level.
Scripting? That sounds kind of intimidating.
I know it sounds complex, but it's pretty simple. Instead of typing commands one by one, you can write a script, a set of instructions that automates that whole process for you.
So if I wanted to monitor a log file for suspicious activity, I could write a script that's constantly checking that file for specific keywords and then alert me if something's up.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. With scripting, you can automate tasks like vulnerability scanning, data extraction, report generation, all sorts of things.
That sounds really powerful.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into scripting, can we go back to those data analysis commands you mentioned? Can you give some specific examples of how those are used in cybersecurity?
Sure. So let's take grep, for example. Imagine you're investigating a breach, and you need to find all the login attempts from a specific IP address. You could use grep to search through your authentication logs and pull out all the entries that contain that IP address.
So grep is like a filter, just pulls out that specific information we need.
Exactly. And then let's say you want to analyze those results a little bit further. You could use awk to extract specific fields from those log entries, like the username timestamp, maybe the outcome of the login attempt.
So awk helps us break it down even further. What about sed? How's that used?
Sed is great for manipulating text streams. Let's say you have a log file that's got sensitive info in it, like passwords. You could use 9 to replace those passwords with asterisks before you share it with somebody else.
Makes sense. It sounds like these commands really give us a lot of control over how we analyze this data.
They do. And when you combine these commands with scripting, you can really automate some complex analysis tasks.
I can see how powerful this is.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back, though, and talk about the different types of shells and their strengths and weaknesses.
That's a good idea. So as we mentioned earlier, some shells are more versatile than others. Some are better for certain tasks, and some are designed for certain operating systems. Let's start with POSIX-compliant shells like Bash. They're very widely used and offer a high degree of compatibility across different systems.
POSIX-compliant. What does that even mean?
So POSIX stands for Portable Operating System Interface. It's a set of standards that define how Unix-like operating systems should behave, including the shell. POSIX-compliant shells like Bash adhere to these standards, so it ensures that your scripts run consistently across different platforms.
Okay, so if I write a Bash script on a Linux system, it should run without issues on a Mac system.
In most cases, yes. That's the beauty of POSIX compliance. It makes your scripts more portable and reduces those compatibility issues.
That's great. So Bash is POSIX compliant, widely used. What other shells are commonly used?
Another popular POSIX compliant shell is Zsh, known for its customization options, lots of plugins, and advanced features that really help you be more productive.
Okay, so if I want a shell that's very customizable, Zsh might be a good option for me.
Exactly. And then if you're working in a Windows environment, PowerShell is really the go-to shell there. It's designed specifically for Windows, offers a powerful scripting language, and tons of cmdlets to manage and automate Windows tasks.
So we got Bash, Zsh, PowerShell. Are there any other shells we should know about?
Yeah, well, those are definitely the most common. There are other shells that are useful in certain situations. For example, Kiesh and Tesh use a syntax that's closer to C programming, which can be appealing to programmers familiar with that language.
So if you're comfortable with C programming,
Yeah,
that might be a good option.
exactly. And if you're working in a more resource-constrained environment, like an embedded system, you might consider using something like BusyBox, which is a very lightweight shell that provides a minimal set of commands.
Okay, so there's really no one-size-fits-all when it comes to shells.
No, not at all. It all depends on your needs, your environment, your personal preferences.
This is a lot to take in, but I'm starting to see how data analysis and shells are so essential to cybersecurity.
They are, and we're really just scratching the surface here. In our next segment, we'll dive deeper into scripting, explore some advanced techniques, and see how you can use these tools to perform real-time monitoring and threat detection.
Can't wait. Until then, keep exploring. And remember, the command line is your friend.
So let's talk about real-time monitoring. It's really critical in cybersecurity. It lets us see what's happening on the network as it unfolds.
So we're not just looking at historical data. We're actively watching for threats as they occur.
Exactly. Tools like Tail, nmap, and tcpdump are really powerful for this. Let's start with Tail. You can use it with the -flag to follow a log file, so you see new entries as they appear.
Okay, so that's helpful for keeping an eye on system logs, authentication attempts, things like that. But what about understanding what's happening on the network itself?
That's where nmap comes in. It's a network scanner. Allows you to discover devices on your network, identify open ports, even fingerprint operating systems. You can use it to get a real-time snapshot of your network and look for any suspicious activity.
That sounds really useful for detecting rogue devices, or maybe unauthorized connections.
It is, and for even deeper network analysis, there's tcpdump. It captures and analyzes network traffic, so you can actually see the raw data packets flowing across your network. This is great for troubleshooting network issues, investigating security incidents, even reverse engineering protocols.
Wow, that's getting pretty technical.
Yeah.
But I could see how that would be powerful.
It is powerful, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. That's where data visualization tools come in, like Kibana. They help us make sense of all this data by presenting it visually, which makes it easier to spot those patterns and trends.
So instead of looking at endless lines of code, we can see graphs, charts, dashboards.
Exactly. Kibana lets you create visualizations that show you things like network traffic patterns, user login activity, or even just the frequency of specific security events.
That sounds much more intuitive.
It is. And the best part is that these tools can all be integrated with each other. For example, you could use tcpdump to capture network traffic, then pipe that data into Kibana to visualize it in real time. Or you could write a script that uses grep to search for patterns in your logs, and then display that data in Kibana.
So we can create a whole ecosystem of tools that work together.
Exactly. And scripting plays a key role in that. It lets us connect these tools, automate tasks, and create custom solutions.
Okay, so let's talk more about scripting then. You mentioned Bash earlier, one of those POSIX-compliant shells.
Right.
How would we use that for real-time monitoring?
So let's say you want to monitor a log file for failed login attempts. You could write a bash script that uses tail-f to follow that file, and then use grep to search for the error message that indicates a failed login. If it finds a match, it could send an email alert or even trigger an automated response like blocking that IP address.
That's really useful, but that sounds like it would require a lot of scripting knowledge.
It would, but even a basic understanding can take you a long way. Bash has a fairly straightforward syntax, and there's tons of resources out there to learn. Just start small, experiment, and gradually build up your skills.
So I don't need to be a coding genius.
Not at all. There's lots of pre-built scripts and examples online that you can adapt. The important thing is to understand the basic concepts and be willing to learn.
That's good to know. But with all the talk about AI and machine learning these days, will scripting still be relevant in the future?
That's a great question. It's one a lot of people are asking. While AI and ML are definitely changing the field, scripting is still going to be an essential skill for a while.
How come?
Well, AI and ML are powerful tools, but they're not a silver bullet. They often need to be integrated with existing systems, and that's where scripting comes in. You might need to write scripts to feed data into your AI models, process the outputs, or even train them on specific data sets.
So even in an AI world, we'll still need humans to write code.
Exactly. And beyond that, scripting allows you to create custom solutions that address the unique challenges of your environment. AI and ML models are trained on huge data sets, but they may not always be able to handle the nuances of a specific network or application. So with scripting, you can create targeted tools and techniques.
So scripting gives us more flexibility and control.
Exactly. So while AI and ML are going to change things, scripting is still going to be a crucial skill.
I can definitely see that. It seems like mastering these skills can really give you an edge.
It does.
What else can we do with scripting?
Well, beyond real-time monitoring, you can use scripting to automate other security tasks, like vulnerability scanning, user account management, incident response procedures.
Wow, that sounds like it could save a lot of time.
It does.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. So imagine you're responsible for managing user accounts on a large network. You could write a script that automatically creates new accounts, assigns them to the right groups, sets their permissions based on their role. This would save you hours of manual work.
Yeah. What about vulnerability scanning?
You could write a script that regularly scans your systems for vulnerabilities. Using tools like nmap or Nessus, it could then generate a report, prioritize those vulnerabilities, and even suggest some fixes.
So instead of doing all that manually, we can just have a script do it for us.
Exactly. You could even integrate these scripts into your CI/CD pipeline, so those security checks are done every time you deploy code.
That's great.
It is. Scripting can also be helpful for incident response. You could create scripts that automate things like isolating infected machines, backing up critical data, or even analyzing malware samples.
So it helps us respond more quickly and efficiently.
Exactly. By automating these tasks, you free up your security team to focus on more strategic aspects.
This has been really helpful. I never realized how much scripting could do.
It's a powerful tool, and the possibilities are really endless. In our final segment, we'll look at some more advanced scripting techniques and some real-world examples.
I can't wait. Until then, keep experimenting. And remember, the command line is your oyster. Okay, so I'm ready to take my scripting skills to the next level. What are some of those advanced techniques that cybersecurity pros are using?
Well, one technique that comes to mind is using regular expressions, or regex for short.
I've heard of regex,
Yeah.
but I've never really understood how it works.
Yeah, so regex is a powerful way to define patterns in text. It's like creating a custom search language that can find very specific pieces of information within large data sets.
So if I wanted to find like all the email addresses in a file, or maybe identify suspicious URLs in a log, I could use regex to define the pattern for those things.
Exactly. Tools like grep and sed allow you to use regex. For more precise searching and data manipulation, it takes a little time to master, but it can be incredibly valuable.
What are some other advanced scripting techniques?
Another interesting area is using APIs. A lot of security tools and platforms offer APIs that allow you to interact with them programmatically.
Oh.
So you can write scripts that automate things like retrieving data, running scans, or even triggering actions based on events.
So I could write a script that automatically pulls security alerts from my intrusion detection system and then takes action based on those alerts.
Yes, exactly. Or you could write a script that integrates your security tools with your ticketing system and automatically create tickets for high-priority alerts.
That's awesome. Are there any real-world examples of how these techniques are being used?
Sure, let's take threat hunting, for example. Threat hunters are constantly looking for signs of malicious activity that might have gotten past traditional security measures. They often use scripting to automate the analysis of large data sets, correlate data from multiple sources, and identify subtle indicators of compromise.
So they're not just waiting for an alert, they're proactively searching for threats.
Right, and scripting helps them do that much more efficiently. For example, they might write a script that analyzes network traffic for anomalies that could point to data exfiltration or command and control activity.
Wow, that's interesting.
Another area is malware analysis. Reverse engineers often use scripting to automate the process of disassembling malware, identifying its functionality, and creating signatures for detection.
So they're writing code to understand the code of the malware.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating field.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I had no idea how powerful scripting could be for cybersecurity.
It is a powerful tool, and the best part is that it's a skill anyone can learn. With some dedication and practice, you can really unlock the potential of scripting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been a really great deep dive into data analysis and scripting.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the command line is your friend. And with a little bit of creativity, you can use these tools to protect yourself.
To our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of data analysis and scripting in cybersecurity. We've seen how important it is for defending our digital world and how professionals use these tools to sift through mountains of data to find those critical needles in the haystack. Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to cyber threats. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.